This is the English oasis. Wear the right costume, speak the right gear, and always keep shifting. Podcast. The Context Chameleon, Mastering Formal Verses. Casual English. Welcome back to the English Oasis. We've talked about how to sound like a leader and how to tell stories, but there is a hidden skill that separates the advanced learner from the natural speaker. The switch. Have you ever felt like you were wearing a tuxedo to a beach party? Or a swimsuit to a funeral? That's what it feels like when you use the wrong register of English. Today, we follow Ken. Ken's English is perfect, grammatically, but he has a problem. He only has one mode. He sounds exactly the same when he's talking to his CEO as he does when he's grabbing a beer with his colleagues. Today, we learn how Ken became a context chameleon, mastering the subtle art of shifting between the boardroom and the break room. Part 1. The textbook trap. Ken was a senior analyst, moving from a local office to a global headquarters in Chicago. His English scores were at the top of the scale. He knew every irregular verb and every complex tense. But within 2 weeks, Ken felt lonely. In meetings, he was fine. But during the in-between moments, the 5 minutes before a meeting starts, the walk to the elevator, the Friday happy hour, Ken was struggling. When a colleague said, "Hey Ken, how's it going?" Ken would respond, "I am functioning quite well. Thank you. And you?" His colleagues would nod slowly, say, "Cool," and then turn to talk to someone else. Ken wasn't being rude. He was being too correct. He was trapped in the textbook register. In English, being too formal in a casual setting creates a social barrier. It makes you seem cold, distant, or even arrogant. Ken realized that while he had learned the language of business, he had never learned the language of connection. He noticed that his American colleagues used a completely different set of shortcuts. They didn't say, "I am going to." They said, "I'm gonna." They didn't say, "I am not sure." They said, "I don't know." Ken realized that English isn't just one language. It's a multi-level game. If you play every level with the same gear, you fail. He needed to understand the hidden scale of English registers. The formal boardroom. Passive voice, full words, complex Latin-based verbs A, G. Accumulate. The consultative meeting. Standard professional English. The casual break room. Phrasal verbs, contractions, and slang light A, G. Pile up. Ken's textbook brain was stuck on level 1. He had to learn how to loosen the tie of his English without losing his professional respect. Part 2. The phrasal verb bridge. Ken's first lesson in becoming a chameleon was mastering the phrasal verb. Elias, his mentor, told him, "Ken, if you want to sound like a friend, stop using Latin. Use phrasal verbs." English has a dual vocabulary. We have fancy words from French, Latin, and earthly words from Germanic roots. Formal Latin. We need to postpone the meeting. Casual phrasal. We need to put off the meeting. Ken started a phrasal verb diary. He realized that in the break room, people don't discuss things. They talk them over. They don't discover problems. They find out. Ken began practicing the same sentence in 2 ways. The register switch exercise, Mode A, to the director. I would like to ascertain why the project was delayed. Mode B, to a teammate. I want to find out why the project was held up. By practicing the switch, Ken started to feel the atmosphere of the language. He realized that formal English is about distance, while casual English is about proximity. He also learned the power of contractions. He realized that native speakers use contractions 90% of the time. When Ken said, "I do not think so," it sounded like an argument. When he said, "I don't think so," it sounded like an opinion. Ken was finally building the casual bridge. He was learning that being correct isn't the same as being connected. But he still had one major fear: the slang jungle. How do you use casual English without sounding like you're trying too hard? Part 3. The slang jungle. It was Friday, 5:00 p.m. The team was heading to a local pub. Ken felt a familiar knot in his stomach. In a meeting, he was a king. But in a bar, he felt like an alien. As the drinks arrived, the register dropped even lower. His colleague, Mike, leaned in and said, "Man, this week was a total slog, right?" "I'm wiped." Ken's brain went into translate mode. Slog? Wiped? He knew the dictionary definition. A slog is a difficult walk. Wiped means cleaned with a cloth. But in this context, he was lost. In the past, Ken would have stayed silent or said something stiff like, "Yes, the previous 5 days were quite exhausting," which would have killed the conversation immediately. Ken decided to apply the Safe-Slang Rule. He realized that as a non-native speaker, trying to use hyper-trendy slang like on fleek or no cap often sounds forced, what we call cringe. Instead, he focused on universal, casual English, words that have been in the language for 30 years and are safe for everyone. Instead of exhausted is greater than use beat or wiped. Instead of understand is greater than use get it. Instead of very is greater than use pretty or super. Then he used his secret weapon, the echo effect. When Mike said the week was a slog, Ken didn't need to know a synonym. He just had to echo the sentiment. "Tell me about it." Mike: "Total slog. I'm ready for the weekend." By echoing Mike's choice of the word slog, Ken was signaling, "I am in your world. I am part of this tribe." This is the social glue of casual English. You don't have to be original. You just have to be in sync. Ken also noticed the softener technique. In formal English, we are direct. "I disagree." In casual English, we soften the blow to keep the friendship. I'm not so sure about that. Or, I see what you mean, but... By the second round of drinks, Ken wasn't just standing there. He was participating. He realized that casual English isn't about perfect grammar. It's about vibe and rhythm. He stopped worrying about his endings and started focusing on his connections. He was no longer the textbook specialist. He was becoming one of the guys. But then, Monday morning came. Ken had a presentation for the board of directors. Now he had the opposite problem. How could he tighten the tie and get his professional authority back without sounding like a robot again? Part 4. The professional pivot. Monday morning arrived. The casual jeans were replaced by a crisp navy suit. The slogs and beers were a memory. Today, Ken had to present the annual audit to the board of directors, the most formal environment in the company. Ken faced a new danger, the slang spillover. Sometimes, once you learn to be casual, it's hard to turn it off. If he used softeners or phrasal verbs during this presentation, he might look like he lacked precision. He needed to perform the professional pivot. The pivot isn't about being a robot again. It's about linguistic elevation. Ken realized that formal English is built on 3 specific pillars: the passive voice, Latinate Precision, and the inclusive we. 1. Shifting to the passive voice. In the bar, Ken said, "I found a mistake in the data. Direct, personal, casual." In the boardroom, Ken said, "An inconsistency was identified within the dataset." By using the passive voice was identified, Ken removed the I and focused on the result. In high-level English, this creates an atmosphere of objectivity. It makes the data feel like a universal truth, not just Ken's opinion. 2. Upgrading the verb, the Latin return. Ken reached back into his textbook brain, but this time he used it strategically. Casual. We need to make sure this doesn't happen again. Pivot. We must ensure that these discrepancies are mitigated moving forward. Words like ensure, mitigate, and discrepancy act as authority markers. They signal to the board that Ken is a serious professional who respects the gravity of the room. 3. The inclusive we and would. Ken learned that the most powerful word in a formal setting isn't I, it's we. And the most powerful modal verb is would. Instead of, "I want to show you this," he said, "we would like to draw your attention to." This is called distancing language. It's polite, it's grand, and it invites everyone into the decision-making process. The mid-presentation micro-switch. Halfway through the presentation, a director asked a very personal question about Ken's team. Here, Ken showed his true chameleon mastery. He didn't stay 100% formal. He did a micro-switch. He leaned in slightly, lowered his pitch, and used a slightly more consultative tone. To be honest, the team worked around the clock on this. They really stepped up. By using the phrasal verb stepped up in that one specific moment, he showed humanity. Then he immediately pivoted back, and as a result, the audit was completed ahead of schedule. Ken realized that being a chameleon doesn't mean changing who you are. It means changing the tool you use to match the room you are in. He wasn't lying. He was adapting. By the end of the presentation, the board didn't just see a specialist. They saw a leader who knew how to command a room. But he also clearly understood the people behind the numbers. Ken had mastered the most difficult switch of all, the switch between respect and relatability. Part 5. The Chameleon Checklist. Ken's transformation was complete. He was no longer the man who sounded like a textbook at a bar. He had learned that fluency isn't about having a huge vocabulary. It's about having the right vocabulary for the right moment. He realized that every professional interaction sits on a register scale. To help you master this, we've distilled his experience into the Chameleon Checklist. Before you speak, ask yourself these 3 questions to determine your English gear. 1. What is the power distance? Is the person you are talking to above you in the hierarchy, or are they a peer? High distance, boss, client. Use the boardroom gear. Focus on passive voice and modal verbs would, could, might. Low distance colleague, friend. Use the break room gear. Focus on phrasal verbs and direct language. 2. What is the physical setting? Fixed seating, conference, table. This usually signals a formal or consultative register. Use full words and precise technical terms. Fluid seating, standing, coffee, pub. This signals a casual register. Use contractions and echo the slang of others. 3. What is the emotional temperature? High stakes, conflict. Move toward formal. It creates a buffer that keeps things professional. Celebration, bonding. Move toward casual. It breaks down walls and builds social glue. Conclusion. The freedom of choice. Ken's journey taught him a profound lesson. Language is a costume. When you only know one register, you are stuck in one costume. You are limited. But when you become a context chameleon, you gain the freedom to move through the world with ease. You can walk into a high-powered negotiation in New York and command the room with Latinate precision. 2 hours later, you can sit in a diner with a new acquaintance and bond over a slog of a week using phrasal verbs. Ken is no longer the stiff specialist. He is the man who gets invited to the big meetings and the Friday drinks. He is respected for his mind and liked for his personality. In the Oasis, we want you to belong in English. The desert of language learning is full of people who speak correctly, but the Oasis is filled with people who speak appropriately. Like Ken, you now have the map. You have the gears. It's time to start shifting. You've just completed the journey of the context chameleon. Ken went from a textbook robot to a social master, And now it's your turn to read the room. The Oasis Challenge. Identify one Latin verb you use too often and find its phrasal verb equivalent. Try using it with a teammate. Do you struggle more with being too formal or too casual? Tell us in the comments. We want to help you find your perfect balance. If Ken's story helped you, please share this episode with a fellow professional who might be stuck in the textbook trap. In our next topic, we'll see how Maya tackles topic #4, the storyteller's secret, where we learn how to turn dry facts into persuasive narratives. This is the English Oasis. Wear the right costume, speak the right gear, and always keep shifting.